Five. Hi everyone. I'm so excited today to have with me an industry legend. Well, look, I'm already getting people joining just because of your name, Jane. Uh, her name is Jane Friedman, and she reports on the publishing industry, and she runs more than one newsletter. She has a paid newsletter, and then she has a free Substack newsletter where she just talks about the latest industry and the latest publishing trends. And she's been called the most trusted voice in publishing. So I am really excited. And I was surprised that she accepted my invitations since I'm a small fish. But, she's that kind of person that she supports the underdog. So, Jane, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you. And I already see that we already have 20 people live just by hitting go live today. So people are excited to hear from you. All right, Jane. And I think you said this is the first time you go live on Substack. So I'm excited to be the person who's doing that. So you've been called, as I said, the most trusted voice in publishing. And for anyone who does not know your work yet, how did you build that trust over 25 years? And what does your day to day actually look like now?
So I started working in the publishing industry in the 90s, and I've
Okay.
spent my whole career in this industry. And I started off working at Writer's Digest, which still exists today, although in kind of a smaller form. It used to encompass a lot of different things, and today it's mainly a magazine and an event program, both online and in person. So I'm still affiliated with Writer's Digest, but I left there in 2010. And then I started reporting on the industry around that time, launching my paid newsletter in 2015. So I think part of it is I've been around for a very long time, been very consistent in what I produce. I have spoken to just about every conceivable industry player at this point, and I try to offer a 360-degree perspective. I certainly have my own opinions on all sorts of issues, but I don't think that's nearly as important as giving people all of the information they need to make the best decision for their own career, because my goals are not going to align with everyone else's goals.
Hmm. So you also run the Bottom Line newsletter, and it's on like a different platform, not
Yeah,
Substack.
that's right.
And why did you decide to host it somewhere else rather than Substack? And I know you're a bit skeptical of Substack from what I read. So I want to hear, why did not you join the party where everyone is moving to
Right.
Substack? And why did you stuck with a different platform?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most simple answer is that I started my paid newsletter before Substack existed. Had it existed when I started, which was in 2015, that the ease of use would probably have been really hard to turn down. That's what I thought. Like when Substack first launched, I thought, oh my God, finally, someone has put together the tech stack required to easily manage a paid newsletter. I mean, that was my first impression of it, that before it became what it is today. It has changed a lot over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
But then, once I obviously I saw the tools for a few seconds, I thought about switching, but by that point, I had already put in all the work to create my own, um, subscription management system. Everything sits on my own website, and my own website, which is at janefriedman.com, already gets 6 figures of traffic every month. So, it doesn't make sense for me to divert a huge part of my audience over to Substack. I've already built my platform. But, other writers aren't in the same position as me. I'm well established. I have this website traffic. I already had newsletters, free newsletters that helped lead into the paid newsletter. So, the system was already up and running, and I wasn't going to fork over 10% to Substack for something I'd already built.
Hmm. So as you said, Substack has changed dramatically, and there's a recent case study of Lena Dunham. Who, for those who don't know who Lena Dunham is, she's an actress who created the show Girls, and she recently published her memoir called Famesick.
Mm,
And I just read a story in I think it was Fast Company that says, and they featured Lena Dunham as a case study
mm,
in which she sold 60,000 copies of her book in a week just by leveraging Substack, by using notes, by appearing on, by collaborating with other Substack authors, using live. So, based on that, do you still believe? And I'm quoting you that Substack is both great
mm.
and terrible for authors, or now you think Substack is great for author after the Lena Dunham case of selling 60,000 copies.
Well, there are many different use cases for Substack. I think that's what
Okay.
makes it so hard to discuss. It's not just one thing, and it's not one thing for all authors. So, when I wrote my initial article about Substack as both good and terrible, I was really looking at it from the perspective of the value of having an author newsletter, like a free email newsletter that
Okay.
helps keep you in touch with the people most interested in your work, your fans,
Okay.
basically, or
Okay.
people, your peers, your colleagues. And my concern was that Substack was introducing this paid subscription model, and which was like I said, this is a really valuable functionality, but I would say the large majority of authors, maybe 90% of authors, should not be charging for an author newsletter that is essentially a marketing vehicle for their work.
Mm,
So I think it just Substack ends up conflating a lot of different goals under one umbrella, also a lot of different functionalities. And so part of the point of my article was I love email newsletters. My career is built on email newsletters and websites. But I felt like Substack was really muddying the waters by suggesting people really ought to charge for their email newsletter. I mean, there are ways to do it that can be productive, that can lead to a living. But obviously, I think, as you know, as anyone who's here probably knows, Substack will suggest at every turn, shouldn't you charge? People might pledge. How about earning some money? And it is not easy to get people to pay for a subscription. I know firsthand. Now, the other thing I would say is that the Lena Dunham situation, this is really about using Substack as a means of book marketing and publicity, whether or not you have a Substack newsletter. So I would certainly encourage every author of books to be looking at specific people, specific outlets, media outlets, individuals like yourself, look at who is on Substack, who already has an audience that might be appropriate for my book marketing and publicity campaign. Now, I wouldn't credit Substack for selling every single one of those copies of her memoir. It's book sales are complicated, right? So that it comes from a lot of different places, sources. It's hard to track, but I do think it gives credit to Substack for um, being critical in the literary bookish community. I mean, there's so many other examples we could point to that I think are super relevant for Substack's importance in writing and publishing, like Ron Charles from the Washington
mm,
Post jumping over to Substack after he gets laid off. And there was also a really good conversation recently between John Warner and Lincoln Michelle about the role of Substack in giving writers an outlet and also making it possible for them to earn money from short pieces. So, like, there is definitely this, it's filling this gap that was created by the decline of the newspaper and magazine industries. It's so hard to make a living as a freelancer today. That path is all but dried up. So, Substack is fulfilling a really important role there. But if I'm just looking at author newsletter, I mean, there are lots of ways to do that, and Substack isn't, the
mm.
end all be all.
Well, I think if you think of it only as an author, but what if you think of it as an authorpreneur, where the book is one part of your income, but you have multiple streams of income? Like for me, books is a very small margin, and the other way I make money is ghostwriting, book coaching, and also Substack, where the way I monetize it is I give everything for free, but I give master classes
Yeah.
for free for paid subscribers, so they actually get something in return rather than buy my book, right?
Right.
So I think there are two things. There's the author and there's the authorpreneur. And we all know that unless you're Stephen King, be living off your books is really, really hard. And you have to supplement it with other streams of income. And that's when Substack kind of fills that gap between author transitioning to an authorpreneur. And I think that's why people like me need a place like Substack. And the other thing is you have the Substack newsletter for you is for free, correct? And the other one is paid. Is that your model?
So, I have a lot of newsletters, and it gets really confusing. I mean,
Yeah,
and I am responsible for the mess, right?
yeah.
So I don't really have a newsletter on Substack. I mean, I technically do, but I post to it once or twice a year. And it's really about what I call more personal quandaries related to the career that I have chosen, which is
Okay.
ultimately advice giver for writers but I do more reporting, business reporting now than I ever have. And so that piece of my career has nothing to do with Substack. It is run entirely through my website. The newsletter itself gets through MailChimp, but the subscription management happens on my website. And then I also have a free newsletter called Electric Speed, again, not on Substack, that I run through a service called Kit. Used to be called ConvertKit. So none of the newsletters that actually mean something to me that I consider carrying monetary value, because the free newsletter also carries sponsorships, so I earn money from that. None of them are on Substack. And I just fully own and control what's happening there. I am not saying that people should follow my lead. As I said, there are a lot of unique considerations for how I've built my career over time that don't apply to other people, especially if you're early career and emerging. Substack has really great built-in marketing, promotion, community discoverability, the recommendation system, the social media layer. I coast a little bit on that social media layer because it's a really useful place to interact with the literary community. That's why I'm here today. There's
Mm,
a lot of the best conversations about writing and publishing are happening on Substack. So
yeah.
so I participate.
Yeah, but don't you feel like if maybe you participate more and show up more than just twice a year, you'll get more discoverability? Because the magic of Substack is how you discover new audience, and it's basically these are your people, it's your tribe. Like you go where your tribe is, and your tribe actually lives on Substack. So would that make you change your mind about being more active on Substack just to have a wider audience, or you're okay with the audience that you have?
Well, I mean, for clarity, the newsletter, which is the name of it is Sinister Malfactor of Panglossian Expectations. I post to that 1 to 2 times a year, but I'm on notes every day,
Ah, okay, okay,
right? So, like I said, I use it like social media, so I am showing up as I would on any other social media site. But,
okay.
I have to say that the problem, I think, for others, again, those who are listening to if Jane's doing this, should I do it? Um, I don't own and control the social media engagement or the community here, but the people who subscribe to my newsletters off of Substack, the people who visit my website, that is more valuable to me than the ephemeral nature of social media interaction, whether it's on Substack or LinkedIn or somewhere else.
Hmm,
So I would also say that there is an enormous overlap between the people I'm engaging with on Substack and the people who are already subscribed to something that I do.
mhm,
So for me, it's about, again, just being part of conversations that are happening. I don't know that I'm necessarily increasing my audience by leaps and bounds by my participation on Substack, but certainly I do get some discoverability. But that's not my career challenge right now. It's not
yeah,
necessarily that I need a bigger audience. I need to figure out how to get more people to buy in to things like my paid newsletter or to classes, which is that, that's where the money comes from.
Interesting. Okay. So, Jane, the title of this live chat is the publishing trends, right? And that's kind of your specialty. And one thing I want to start the conversation is self-publishing. And the reason I mention self-publishing because it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and Amazon KDP and others keep improving the features, and publishers keep shutting down and making life really hard. To the degree, I even interviewed somebody here on Substack who was offered a deal by Random House, and he turned it down because, like, I make more money from self-publishing, I have more control. And on the flip side, there's the cachet of being a quote unquote traditionally self published author. And I've seen people in their bio now, they say traditionally published authors. Instead of saying author, they have to add that kind of cachet that they traditionally published. So, how do you feel about self publishing? And where's the trend going in 2026 when it comes to self publishing?
I mean, to just step back for a second, self-publishing has been growing for a very long time now. And in the last 2 years, I would say the growth has been charged to a degree we have not yet seen because of AI. So some of the growth is a little bit strange
Mm,
and isn't the sort of person I would equate to you or someone who's on Substack or someone who's associating with the literary community. In other words, there are a lot of get rich quick schemes associated with some of the growth that we're seeing in self publishing because of AI.
I see.
So I just want to set that part aside because I'm not really actually interested in the community of get rich quick book publishing people, which exists. Um, so to just look at trends for self publishing for the rest of us, I would say that if you're in a genre fiction category like romance, romantasy, science fiction and fantasy, lit RPG, these are areas where there is a really strong career path for someone to go the self-publishing route, but it really depends on being able to produce consistently over a period of years. It often means writing in a series. That's where you tend to see the success. And when authors are able to find their readership that way, and it's often through Amazon, let's be really clear, as well as the Kindle Unlimited subscription program, for authors who are able to make that work, and again, we're talking about usually a 2 to 4, maybe 5 year establishing period. I find that the authors who do really well end up selling some rights to traditional publishers while retaining some other rights. So they
Mm,
might do a paperback rights deal or they might be selling foreign rights. And, the authors who are really doing really well, they have agents who are helping negotiate these deals for them. I just did an article earlier this year about the number of self-publishing to traditional deals doubling, as reported by Publishers Marketplace, doubling over the last year. So that would be from 2024 to 2025. So it's publishers like this pipeline because it reduces their risk and they are building on a readership that's already been proven.
hmm.
So I expect this to continue. I don't think it's going to slow down.
Interesting, because in the past, people used to tell you if you self-publish, nobody's gonna look at you. And like publishers are gonna like completely reject you. But now it's changed where, and correct me if I'm wrong, where publishers come to self-published authors and try to work with them. But why did this change? Because of the stigma, or because they proved their worth by all the books that they sold on their own?
Um, why did it change? I mean, I think that publishers, first of all, they don't move all that fast. If they see a market opportunity, in the self-published author space, like it fits a hot subgenre, it's much easier for them to pick up what's already working. I think something else that plays into it is how much more difficult book marketing and promotion has become. Um, Part of this has to do with the collapse of traditional book coverage. I mentioned the newspapers and magazine industries cratering. I think how people find out about books, it's more driven by word of mouth among peers, influencers, social media. You've got book talk. And so the old voices that used to help you discover books, they don't have as much relevance anymore. And that's where traditional publisher strength typically lied.
Mm,
So, you know, that like there's I want to be clear, there are lots of different variables here. There's not like one sole thing that's causing this. But something else that's happened, I think, is when you look at the creation of some imprints like Bloom Books at Source Books, they're starting in a way that makes them a little bit different than how like a big New York Big Five publishing house operates. It's much more collaborative, and they're looking at this as more of a partnership rather than I have to own it all. They see that the author brings the self-publishing author that I'm talking about brings a really valuable a skill set to the table that involves understanding their audience and reader probably better than the publisher does. But the publisher has the expertise and the mastery of physical distribution and retail channels.
mm,
So I think some of the publishers that are more innovative, I would say more enlightened, they see that there is an opportunity here for both sides. It's a much more collaborative business partnership. Whereas I think if you go back to self-pub to traditional deals that happened, say, even 10 years ago, it was a little bit more of a, "You just give us all your rights and we'll take care of it from here." I think everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but, I think that authors are really wising up to how that does not serve them, and I do think self-publishing authors hold more power when they have that direct reach to readership, and that's almost always the case with the genre fiction authors I'm discussing.
mm. Fascinating. Okay, let's see, what are the top publishing trends of 2026 and beyond that we should pay attention to?
Well, AI is probably at the top of everyone's list, like it or not, just because there's so much uncertainty, fear, anxiety, the lawsuits. There's not a lot of transparency about what publishers are doing. Meanwhile, who knows what the authors are doing, as we saw with the Shy Girl case, where
Yeah,
the publisher dropped the book. Um, I think it also, you're going to see more AI use that allows books to reach more formats or more audiences because AI reduces the costs associated with translations or audiobook narration or audio translations.
yeah.
So that's something. Audio is also just it still has a lot of enthusiasm and energy around it as because it appears to have brought more readers into the publishing space, not least because of Spotify's entry into the market not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. So everyone's kind of paying attention to how the audiobook market might grow, because it's been a really meaningful challenger to Audible's dominance. So that's another trend that I've been watching.
Mhm.
Um, I bet that I'll pause there. Maybe, if there's something you're curious about, I could speak to it, but AI tends to suck all the air out of
And
the room.
how do you feel about AI? Because there's like the conversation is so contentious and it's so
Yeah.
annoying sometimes because there's people who's like, I would never ever in my whole life use AI, and some people like let's say, respected authors like Joanna Penn. She's who runs the podcast. What's the name of the podcast? I forgot. The Creative Pen.
Yeah.
She's all about AI and she's very transparent about how she uses AI in fiction and in other ways. So, where do you stand when it comes to AI?
I don't like the circular firing squad that has emerged out of this issue, and by that I mean authors attacking other authors for whether they decide to use this technology or not.
Correct.
Um, I think that a really complex issue, and boiling it down into black and white sides is helping nobody. It's also reducing transparency and
Mhm.
communication and our ability to grapple with the really existential questions that this technology has brought. to our door. Obviously, the implications are so much bigger than publishing, but to just look at the publishing industry alone, that's hard enough as it is. And to just try and shut down conversation by saying you're a bad person, you should be ashamed. And I really don't like the op eds where authors say you're not a real author if you're doing XYZ. I don't think that's helping anyone. Um, so I would say that the other thing I would add is that all of the scandals related to AI, whether it's Shy Girl, whether it's a book reviewer using AI, like in the New York Times, like
Yeah.
there's it feels like there's a scandal, every week or two. I don't think these scandals are indicative of how AI is going to change the industry, but that's often when authors discuss AI, when we talk about AI, it often gets reduced to the worst actors. And I think and so we're not talking very often about actually what are some of the enlightened uses, and they do exist, I promise you. But no one wants to talk about it because they don't wanna get shot down. They don't wanna be told you're a bad person. Those people are not speaking up to talk about it.
Hmm.
So, I see my role in this as just as I see that my video stopped. Give me a second.
I can still hear you. Yeah.
Um, I see my role as trying to bring factual information to all of this
Yeah.
rather than, a lot of opinions. I think reducing the temperature in the room is more useful at this moment in time, and trying to make, give people a 360-degree view of what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah, like one of the things that people fail to talk about is how efficient AI can make it. For example, I recently has been messing with Cowork, with
Yeah.
Claude Cowork, and the use is for I hired an AI chief of staff. I called her Sultana, and every morning Sultana wakes up and tells me what I need to do. Like, you have an interview for Jane, prepare for it. Like, it's it's extremely efficient. It's researches all the media industry latest topics. It's arrive in my box. Sometimes it drafts respond to my emails in a draft format in my Gmail inbox, and I look at it and change it and I send it. I hired the whole assistant for free. I mean, I still pay for Claude, but these are one of the uses that if you don't use I, you're missing out on that level of efficiency. So, and I've seen it especially with authors. It's a very toxic conversation, and um, the people who are transparent about it are very few because I think they're worried that they're going to be canceled. Uh,
Yes. I will say that, I certainly use AI for business administration, for efficiencies in the work that I do. I'm basically a one-woman operation with my husband who
yeah.
supports the business as well. But I do wanna say in regards to the publishing industry, because I think this is one of authors' fears. They fear that they're somehow going to be written out of the publishing story because AI will replace them, or people who work as editors or other creative people in the industry. The AI's efficiencies will put them out of work, and I think this is a really valid fear. But I would also like to say, and I think the good publishing leaders recognize this, and there are more good ones than bad ones. I don't think anyone believes getting a book to market faster is gonna sell more books or make the publishing industry stronger. Like,
Mhm.
it's and or producing more books is going to actually sell more books or make the publishing industry stronger. So, again, all valid fears, but publishing's core problem has never been, "Oh my gosh, how do we get this book out more quickly?" It's rarely about that, although I did talk about publishers catching up to trends late. This is a little bit of a different issue. But I just wanna put that out there, that I think that the way AI obviously, this could go in a lot of different directions, and I'm not gonna assume it's gonna be all good, but I think if we're looking at AI for how it can improve and grow the industry, it really has to do with bringing more insights as to how readers can be reached, looking for patterns, in the all of the vast amounts of data that publishers hold about book sales and marketing, but they cannot analyze because they don't have the time or they don't have the ability technically to analyze that data.
Hmm, interesting. Okay, other trends. Is book talk still big? Is it still the place, or did we move past that?
We haven't moved past it. It's still relevant, but it's not something that I personally engage with, so I just have to follow what, other people are saying. There's a very specific Substack, "Romancing the Phone" by, oh, maybe someone in the chat can remember why I'm blanking on her name, but she's a literary agent, and she often writes about what's happening on Book Talk, and so I read her in order to ensure that I'm staying up to date.
Okay. Another thing, what about live selling? Live selling, I've seen it with Amazon
Yeah.
Live, where you go and interview the author, and somebody approached me, and I did a live Amazon Live, and then you have the ticker comes with your books, and you click, and it started with TikTok Shop where the live selling, and I did experiment with it, but I got so busy I forgot about it. But I went on TikTok and I created a shop, and I talked my book, and I say, "Oh, by the way, the link to my book is in this video." And in 2 minutes, somebody, "I just bought it. I loved it." And I was like astounded by the concept of this live selling that's actually happening. And you have like influencers like Gary Vee and who's saying live selling is the future. Do you think that live selling when it comes to books is another one of the trends that we should keep an eye on?
It is fascinating, and I did a piece, late last year about some of the authors succeeding on TikTok Live specifically. It reminds me a little bit of, the days of QVC and the Home Shopping Network, like, the appeal of that goes back a long time. It's
Correct.
it's it's
Yeah.
not new. I don't think it's the future of how books will be sold, but I think it does there are some authors who are probably going to be very good at it and can take advantage of that. But I think it for TikTok in particular, managing a TikTok shop, making that work, doing the fulfillment, like, that's no small thing.
Yeah.
So, but for authors who have reached a certain level of success, I can see why it's in a very attractive path for sales. And one of the guys that I interviewed, can't remember if it was either I think it might have been AP Beswick, he's a fantasy author, or and I also talked to Zach Diamante, those were 2 authors in particular who were using TikTok a lot. One of them did, like, a weekly, uh, live show on TikTok that was basically him boxing up orders, and he got to a point where he could reliably predict how much product he was gonna move as a result of doing that TikTok live. So, but both of those authors spoke a lot about the fulfillment burden that presents, enlisting family members to fulfill the orders because TikTok, you have to get those orders out prompt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to be very prepared.
But this only works for self-published authors because I don't think publishers would allow you to sell on TikTok, correct? And
I mean, I don't if you're traditionally published, you can do it, but you need your own stock, or you would need to do it in partnership with your publisher who is prepared to fulfill the orders
yeah,
for you.
yeah, yeah. Okay. What is another thing we need to keep an eye on as authors who want to sell books? What is the one thing we talked about AI, we about TikTok? Another thing, like for me, I think about podcasting. Is it people say like it's becoming a podcast tour? Before it was called the blog tour, now it's a podcast tour. What is the trend that we need to keep eye on? And besides all of these things, if you want to sell more books or publish more books,
Oh, well, this just gives me a chance to give my speech about how whatever the new thing is, it's probably just like the old thing, it just has a new name.
okay,
I think for marketing and promoting books, there's never gonna be one path or one formula or one plan that's gonna work for every book and every author, and I always advise people to focus on your strengths when you're putting together your book marketing or launch plan rather than looking at the new shiny or what is the new trend. You have to really look at what your assets are and then also what you're actually good at. It makes no sense for me to tell people to go on podcasts if they're just not good at speaking on a podcast.
mm,
Obviously, there might be times when you want to beef up your skills, get media training, and you can make that decision. But I would first encourage people, especially for a first-time book launch, to look at where can you build on your strengths. That's usually where the success comes from. Um, yeah. I'll stop there.
Okay, so who do you follow? Like, how do you get all these latest information that you like? You're always on top of everything. I want to get your secret
My secret.
for free. Like, who are the people you follow? What's your media consumption like? Do you use AI to help you get information? Like, who's the people that you constantly follow to get this information from?
There are some core industry sources that have always been there that are kind of the baseline if you're following the publishing industry. It includes Publishers Lunch, uh, Publishers Weekly, The Bookseller in the UK, Publishing Perspectives. So those you really need those as your baseline. And then you start adding on people who are working inside or around the industry. And lots of those people are on Substack and have Substack newsletters. So if
Mm,
you go to my Substack profile, just click on reads. There's like 150 publications there. Not all of them are publishing related, but most of them are. And
mm,
so you're going to find things like Publishing Confidential by Kathleen Schmidt or Lincoln Michelle's Countercraft. Um, you're going to find Dear Head of Mine by a Big Five New York editor. And on and on. Anne Trubeck of Belt, Doug Siebold of Agate. Uh, and then there's some people who are off of Substack, like Kate McKean. She used to be on Substack. She does agents and books. And then I follow a lot of like journalism and digital media newsletters like Brian Morrissey of The Rebooting, Simon Owen's media
mm.
newsletter, because there's a lot of issues that overlap between book publishing and digital media, especially with AI and how writers earn a living, since it often involves, as you said yourself, multiple revenue streams. And so news organizations are dealing with those challenges very much in the same way that writers deal with those challenges.
Yeah. So speaking of multiple income streams, so you have your books, and I got your the business of being published. I think it's called of being a writer, right?
Yeah,
Is that called?
that's right.
Yeah, yeah, that's one. So you have your books, you have your newsletter, you have your courses. You sell courses as well. What are like? How do you sell your entrepreneur empire, if I want to call it?
So there's the paid newsletter, which is a big chunk of money, and then the other chunk comes from, um, online classes that I host and some that I teach myself. So I have an online education program that my husband and I run where we
Mm,
bring experts, to do one-time classes. So, like, next week, I'm doing a class with author Stephen James on, abandoning your outline.
mm.
And so we price them really accessibly. It's $25 per class. It's a one
Oh,
and
wow.
done, 90 minutes usually, and then we move on to the next. So I've been doing that since 2019. And then I teach on my own. I don't often host myself. I'm usually teaching with other partners. So in another week or two, I'm teaching a class on how to work with small and independent publishers, but because I think it's an under discussed area
Mm,
with a lot of confusion and myths associated with it. So I'm doing that in partnership with an online community called Inked Voices. Later this week, I'm teaching with the Australian Society of Authors
oh, nice.
because I'm going to be speaking in Australia later this year. So this is my Australia year I don't know if anyone's tuned in from Australia, probably not. The time difference is brutal.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that's where most of the income comes from. And then there's like speaking and some other drips and drabs from other sources.
Any plans for new books in the future?
No, I don't like writing books. I like writing newsletters.
All right. So before we go, I'm just gonna go through quickly the comments and see some people have questions. So someone called Emmett Taylor said, "Jane, excited to see you, I guess." And then politics and aphrodisiac says, "Your newsletter is great, Jane. I learned from it." Also, politics and aphrodisiac say Substack is great, but it has almost too much content.
Mm,
So the competition is fierce. I
it
think
is.
it's better to have a regular newsletter, not on Substack. Emmett Taylor, what do you do if you like Substack but not fan of other platforms? I lecture, I have a website, and love sharing stories about my memoir. Should anyways, especially if I am trying to get traditional publishing.
If you like Substack, stay. There's no reason to go somewhere else. I mean, I think there's that my concern for folks relying solely on Substack? Is that what happens if Substack does something you don't like, or they change the rules, or it's bought by someone that you have a disagreement with? Anything can happen, right? But ride the train for as long as you can if you like it.
Mm. Yeah. Anyone else has any questions for Jane before we conclude? This is your chance, and I believe this is her first Substack live, so I'm very excited to have that honor. But anyway, I'm gonna host the replay and send it to everyone who could not join us. But yeah, I have somebody. Is there a market for political thriller based on elections set in Asia? I get that's a very
Very specific.
very specific question. I guess he's writing a political thriller based on elections set in Asia. Do you have any experience in political, maybe about political thrillers in general?
I mean, you can sell anything. It just depends on whether an agent or publisher likes your voice, likes the premise. Like it's too broad. Like again, you can sell anything, but it's all about the writing and the storytelling. So all you can answer that question by pitching it and seeing what happens.
Hmm. There's another one. Is platform uh, becoming more essential for nonfiction trad publishing?
If you want an agent or a New York publishing deal, like a Big 5 deal, if you want an advance that exceeds $20,000, you're gonna have to have some kind of platform, but that doesn't mean big social media following. It just means how do you reach the audience for the book? That maybe you're the leader of a national organization that ties into your book topic. Maybe you host a really popular podcast. Maybe you are friends with Oprah. Like, platform means a lot of different things. Don't just boil it down to you need all of these numbers online. Although often I admit agents and publishers use that as a shortcut to determine if you have a platform, but you have to look at it more holistically than just I need a social media following.
Mm. Vincent Shaw saying, will the self-publishing sector continue to gain share of the market?
It seems likely, but I don't think it's gonna be growing quite as much as it has in the last 10 years. It's not that yeah, it's a lot of there's a lot of competition.
Mhm. I lost you here. Okay, we seem we looks like either my computer froze or we lost Jane, but we'll wait a bit to see if she comes back. I think looks like we lost Jane. But that's okay. Well, thank you for it's okay. I guess you're stuck with me now. But we'll wait a few minutes. But thank you everyone for joining us today, and please stay in touch. And I'm gonna host the replay. I'm gonna post it, and it's part of my podcast called the Substack Writers Salon. Thank you for joining me. And I'm gonna wait like 1 minute to see if Jane comes back, but otherwise, we will call it a day. And I'm looking at other comments. Somebody said this was great, thank you. But then somebody, thanks Natasha and Jane when you get her back. All right, thank you, but it's probably something happened. That's okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and please stay in touch and until we meet again for another episode of the Substack Writers Salon. Thank you everyone. Bye bye.